Out of the trenches. Me, Chair Wisdom, your questions about World War I. Hit it. Let's see. The Love Wizard asks. The Love Wizard? Flo, did you write in a question? Sorry, I mean, as we all know, Flo is, of course, a love wizard, but what many of you do not realize that actually when Flo used to play with Earth, Wind, and Fire, his name in the band was the Love Wizard. Can we actually get a picture of Flo back when he was in Earth, Wind, and Fire? Can we put that up here? There you guys go. Earth, Wind, Fire, and Flo the Love Wizard. Okay, well, the Love Wizard asks, are there any famous Austro-Hungarian Navy captains? Yeah, there were some extraordinary figures. There was Georg von Trapp, who became a U-boat legend during the war. Now, he was born in 1880, and he entered the Marine Academy in Fiume. Nowadays, that's Rijeka in Croatia now. In 1894, he did this, and he learned his trade on the prestigious Panzerkreuzer Empress and Queen Maria Theresia, and even went as far as China to take part in the Boxer Rebellion at the end of the century. As the Great War broke out, he first commanded a torpedo boat, and then in 1915 was ordered to take command of the Austro-Hungarian submarine SMU-5. Now, Austria-Hungary had only in like 1907, 1908, really began producing submarines when its Kriegsmarine wanted to, diversify the arsenal. And the torpedo was an especially promising weapon in the waters of the Adriatic Sea. Von Trapp managed to sink 11 steamers, among them the Italian cargo ship Milazzo, which was one of the world's largest at 20,000 tons. Let's see, other victims were the French armored cruiser Leon Gambetta, a British tanker, and the Italian submarine Nereide. I'm not certain if I pronounced that right because I've only ever written it. You can correct me later. So over 60,000 tons sunk and captured, which pretty much made Von Trapp a living legend. And he was congratulated even by Emperor Franz Joseph himself. Was eventually promoted to corvette captain and was even ennobled to Georg Ritter von Trapp. But Ritter von Trapp was not as happy with his work as his superiors were. See, the stealth of the submarine was often seen as dishonorable or even a cowardly form of attack, as was sinking ships that were manned by civilian sailors. He said, "So that's what war looks like. There behind me hundreds of seamen have drowned, men who have done me no harm. Men who did their duty as I myself have done, against whom I have nothing personally." But that was indeed what the war looked like until its end. The Treaty of Saint-Germain destroyed the Kriegsmarine entirely by denying Austria any access to the sea. Von Trapp chose not to re-enlist and instead moved first to Italy and later back to Austria, which is an entirely different story. In fact, if you fast forward 20 years or so, that story is The Sound of Music, because this Von Trapp and the Georg von Trapp and the Von Trapp family that The Sound of Music is about are one and the same. Javier Weiss writes, have you come across any examples of obscure Great War poetry during your research that you feel should be preserved? The focus to this day seems to be on the great bards, Siegfried Sassoon, John McCrae, and perhaps Guillaume Apollinaire. But with so many nations embroiled and a much greater proportion of men practicing poetry, surely there are vast amounts of voices out there that have been silenced by time. Indeed, there are many, many voices that are now unheard or were lost to time. 100 years ago, poetry was way more prominent in school and everyday life than it is now, and more highly valued culturally. And most educated soldiers were familiar with the art. And since writing was one of the few leisure activities you could actually do in the trenches, it was a way to be creative and cope with the situation. But yeah, only a relative few got popular or published. Well, let's read some. German poet Gerhard Engelke has often been called the German Wilfred Owen, and we've read some Owen before. I was a soldier, I did my job. Thirsty, sick, yawning, on the march or on guard, surrounded by death and missing home. And you? Were your feelings so unlike mine? Tear open your tunic. Let's see your bare skin. I know that old scar from 1915, and there on your forehead the stitched up gash. But so you won't think my pain is less, I open my shirt. Here's my discolored arm. Aren't we proud of our wounds? Your wounds and mine. These are the words of Charles Hamilton Sorley, a Scottish poet who died at Luce in 1915. You are blind like us. Your hurt no man designed, and no man claimed the conquest of your land. But gropers both through fields of thought confined, we stumble and we do not understand. You only saw your future bigly planned, and we the tapering paths of our own mind, and in each other's dearest ways we stand, and hiss and hate, and the blind fight the blind. Edward Bagritsky, a Russian poet, wrote, Volunteer, my shoulder straps decorated with multicolored cord. That's me, the warrior, the hero of Stockade, the knight of the Masurian swamps, hobbling in blistered jackboots with a service cap cocked on the back of my head. Now I'm used to everything. From where I escaped, these things seem trivial to me. The world charred by a mortar bullet, pierced by a bayonet, tightly wound with barbed wire, the pungent stench of sweat and rancid bread. And there are even a lot of writers even today, like from our longtime fan Irina, whose poem has been officially recognized by a Flanders Historical Society. In Flanders fields the poppies grow. Between the crosses I walk along. 100 years have yet gone by. The larks that still keep singing fly, but I can hear them down below. I live, we all live, but many years ago they suffered, died, for king and country, for those they loved, and now they remain forever in Flanders fields. Cassini 127 writes, Hi Indy, I'm really loving your show, by the way. All right, Cassini. I have a question about drafting. Did countries have specific groups they would target for drafting into military service? Like, for example, a certain ethnicity or race? Yes and no, okay? As the war went on, and professional soldiers were lost, and the initial large numbers of volunteers quickly fell, the governments had to rely on a nationwide draft. That technically meant that men from all parts of society, all ranks of society, were eligible for service, despite their class, their ethnicity, or their allegiance to religion or party. It came down to age, physical fitness, and the profession of the men in question, and this would determine their position. Some men were more valuable at home in the factories or universities, and criminals or disabled men were not drafted at all. Most European military theorists agreed that the best soldier is the son of a farmer. See, he possesses a basic education, he's used to the tough and demanding life of the countryside, and he's lived in a strong patriarchal hierarchy his whole life, unlike, say, the working class in the city or university students. Despite that, there were ethnicities or social groups that were treated with mistrust. The Russian military had its concern about Jewish soldiers. The British mistrusted the Irish. The Germans had their problems with recruits from Alsace, Lorraine, and Poland. The Austro-Hungarians accused the Czechs and Slavic people of disloyalty, and the Ottomans had clashes with the Armenians and the Arabs. Recruiting in colonies was a bit more complicated in that matter. While in the Maghreb and Eastern and Southern Africa, being a soldier for the Europeans was often seen as an honorable feat. Other nations like China or Indochina used it as a way to get rid of criminals or the useless mouths to feed. Speaking of the Maghreb, we did a whole special about what was going on in that region of North Africa, and you can click right here to find that. You can also like us on Facebook, and you can follow us on Twitter, and once again, all your dreams will come true. See you next time.